Saturday, September 21st, 2019, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. I know the repo situation is getting very interesting. The Fed had to do another overnight repo yesterday for 75 billion. That was the fourth in a row. And later on, they announced they're going to keep doing that overnight repo up until October 10th. And they're going to add 2-week repos or term repos for another 50 billion next week. And I know that's important, showing that there are cracks on Wall Street, that financial institutions seem to not be trusting each other, and the Fed is having to step in. Also, an article talking about how John Williams of the New York Fed is clueless about what's going on. He doesn't understand the repo market. No, I know this is all really interesting, and the stock markets fizzled down yesterday, but I want to stay on the gold manipulation story because I think that's getting even more interesting. And before I start into the gold manipulation story, I want to look at the price action of gold yesterday because it was very unusual. Gold was trading between 1500, 1504 most of the day, and then towards the COMEX official close at 1:30 p.m. New York, it just started taking off. As you can see here, this was around 1:10 p.m. New York or 6:10 p.m. London. Very unusual move here. Gold started going up, and then it just closed at 15.16, almost 15.17. So very unusual. You'd expect on a Friday, end of the week, actually gold to have traded down and closed maybe around 1500. So just wanted to point that out. It's pointing to a good start of the week next week. Silver got up to just $18 as well. But now back to gold manipulation. JP Morgan, LBMA as well. I have an interesting thing to talk about the LBMA. And of course, it all started on Monday. There's a story out, and it came out in the FT. 3 JP Morgan traders, metal traders, charged with market manipulation, September 16th. I even made a video about it on Monday. My video was entitled "The War on Gold and Bullion Bank Manipulation," right? So this is what the FT said. U.S. prosecutors have charged 3 JP Morgan metal traders with a massive multi-year scheme to manipulate markets and warned they were continuing to probe higher echelons at the largest U.S. bank. It goes on to say, Michael Novak, the head of precious metals trading, was charged on Monday along with 2 colleagues, Greg Smith and Christopher Jordan, on federal racketeering charges normally used to take down organized crime syndicates. That's what the RICO laws, they used to take down the mafia bosses, right? So they're using that. So that was on Monday. And there's a guy called Ronan Manley. You can find all his stuff on bullionstar.com in the blog section. And he covered this as well. And he did a very good job. And I need to read a lot of stuff to keep abreast of things because I didn't realize that Michael Novak is also or was an LBMA board member. So it says here, this was on the 17th on Tuesday, Ronan Manley said, LBMA board member and JP Morgan managing director charged with rigging precious metals. So yeah, I hadn't realized when I did my video on Monday that Michael Novak was on the board of the LBMA, which is the London Bullion Market Association, which I'll come to in a minute. So here he is in the article that Ronan Manley wrote. Michael Novak, global head of base and precious metals trader at JP Morgan, CEO of JP Morgan Ventures Energy Corporation. It says Mr. Novak has spent his entire career at JP Morgan. In 2006, he began managing the global precious metals team. So there you go. And it's interesting because I saw this story maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, and I said, wow, he's a board member of the LBMA, right? So yesterday, I wanted to check if he was still on the board. So I went onto the LBMA website, and lo and behold, he was. And this was in the morning, probably around 9:30, after I did my video yesterday. And so he was still on the board. He was still on the website. So around 10 o'clock, I actually called the LBMA. I wanted to find out. All I did was find out, went into their website and found the number to contact them, called there. Lady, very polite lady, picked up the phone, and I said to her, I'd like to speak to someone about one of your board members. And she said, well, we don't speak about our members here. And I said, well, and she said, what's it regarding? And I said, well, it's about Michael Novak and the fact that he's been indicted by the DOJ of racketeering charges for rigging the gold market. And I said that, and he's still on your board. And she said, let me try to pass you on to comms, or communications, their public relations department. And she put me on hold and came back and said, well, our comms guy is in a meeting. Please give me your name and number and we'll call you later. And I did. And then about half an hour later, I called her and said, I haven't heard back from your comms guy. And she said, well, actually, he's not in the office today. He's not well. And I asked for his name, and she gave me his name. So Elred Connolly, Public Relations Officer. He was ill that day, yesterday. That's what she told me. So now the connection with the Bank of England, just so people can see how the LBMA and the Bank of England are tied at the hip, right? It says here, LRED provides support to the chief executive in the administration and organization of the association's public affairs. This includes working closely with the marketing and communications leads on publications, marketing materials, the website, and events. He is responsible for press inquiries and is the editor of the LBMA's quarterly publication, The Alchemist. This is the interesting part about his background. Prior to joining the LBMA, he worked at the Bank of England for more than 25 years. During the last 5 years of his career at the bank, he gained specific bullion market experience in his role as gold bullion analyst, supporting senior management in the bank's customer banking division. He previously acted as relationship manager for a portfolio of the bank's customers, including central banks, government departments. So there you go. That's his background. He never called me back. But then in the afternoon, when I came home, I went out for a haircut. I came out and checked the LBMA website. Lo and behold, Mr. Novak was off the website. And I never got a call back from Elred Connolly, by the way. But then, all of a sudden, I saw the headline on Zero Hedge. I also got a email alert from the FT, which I subscribe to. I know it's a globalist organization, but it helps me keep track of things. Gold rigging scandal hits the LBMA. JP Morgan's gold manipulator Novak kicked off LBMA board. So this guy was in the news on Monday this week. And it took the LBMA until Friday to remove him from the board. And I wonder if my call to the LBMA made any difference. I'm not sure. I'm not saying it did. But it's interesting that, after my call, they actually got rid of the guy from the board. The other point I'd like to make, and this is from Ronan Manley's article on Tuesday, is this section here, Michael Novak, LBMA board member. The DOJ charges against Michael Novak following the DOJ, FBI, and CFTC investigation now mean that a board member of the London Bullion Market Association, LBMA, a board which sits at the very top of the LBMA's governance structure, has now been charged with U.S. federal prosecutors with participating in a multi-year racketeering conspiracy to manipulate precious metals markets and defraud customers. And I'll stop here for a second because a lot of people have been saying, oh, they've just been spoofing the market. They're making money selling or spoofing downwards or upwards. But there's more to spoofing than just that. Spoofing moves the market and triggers stops. So if you know where the technical levels are, where the physical market has also stops, you can really move the market a long way with spoofing. And the fact that this guy is was on the board of the LBMA is significant, right? And I'll come to the Bank of England later on as well, because they've been implicated with other kind of manipulation. I'll come to that in a minute. For those not familiar with the LBMA, in the words of its CEO, Ruth Crowell, claims to be the world's authority on precious metals and the standard-setting organization that defines how precious metals are refined as well as traded around the world. Crowell states that it's the LBMA's job to ensure the quality and integrity of the metal itself as well as the market participants, while there are also market elected directors on the LBMA board, such as Michael Novak, who sit on the board and ensure that the market is steering the development of the association. According to the LBMA website, the LBMA board brings independence and decision-making capability as well as promotes and evidences LBMA's core values of leadership, trust, and integrity. So back to the Bank of England. So aside from Michael Novak being on the board until yesterday, 5 days after he was indicted, right? We've got someone else on the board, the chairman of the LBMA, Dr. Paul Fisher. So what's his background? Well, Paul Fisher, economist. Paul Gregory Fisher is a British economist who left the Bank of England in 2016 after 26 years service. In September 2016, he was appointed chair of the London Bullion Market Association, and in December 2016, he became a non-executive director at the UK Debt Management Office. So there you go, another Bank of England guy there, aside from Elred Connolly, right? Both worked for over 20 years at the Bank of England. The other thing I would say, the offices of the LBMA are in the Royal Exchange, as you can see here, within walking distance of the Bank of England, right? So, and the Bank of England has been implicated, as I was saying earlier. And this is actually The Guardian reporting it. It says, and this is from 2017, April 2017, BBC to air a recording that implicates Bank of England in LIBOR scandal. Panorama says it has recording of 2008 call in which Barclays bankers discuss alleged pressure by the Bank of England to lower a rate, right? BBC website, same period, April 2017, LIBOR, Bank of England implicated in secret recording. So I haven't found any more after this on this LIBOR, how can I say, manipulation and implications of the Bank of England. It's like they brought this story out. I didn't watch the panorama back then, but it's gone away from the news. If you Google it, you won't find anything else past April 2017. So if the Bank of England can supposedly and allegedly manipulate LIBOR rates, why couldn't they manipulate gold prices, right? So there we go. What else now I wanted to talk about? Well, I wanted to talk about an Australian YouTube channel, which I've spoken about in the past. It's called Walk the World Digital Finance Analytics, and it's run by Martin North, and he's been with John Adams. He's been trying to get the Reserve Bank of Australia to do an independent audit of its 80 metric tons of gold that it keeps with the Bank of England, right? And it's basically all the gold that the government or Australia owns officially is at the Bank of England. I really recommend you go into this YouTube channel and have a look. They've done a lot of work about this. Basically, John Adams has been asking the Reserve Bank of Australia to talk a little more about their gold at the Bank of England, why it's there. They want to know if they ever done an audit. And what they've said is that the Bank of England did the audit themselves, so they haven't even had an independent audit of the gold there. So that's another thing. Why don't they do an independent audit? Well, I would say it's because the Bank of England uses a lot of that gold that they hold for other central banks to manipulate the gold market through not only the LBMA physical market in London, but also through the futures. The bullion banks use the futures to drive the price lower. Futures is just paper, right? Physical market, you have to lease the gold from the central banks. And even when they lease the gold from the Bank of England, the LBMA members, they actually hypothecate or leverage on it. Let's say they lease a ton, they'll actually sell 10 tons or even more, right? So I would say that that's one of the reasons they don't want an independent audit, because people will see how how can I say, manipulation works. Yes, there's spoofing. I've thought about that as well. There's a lot more than spoofing, but the fact that now we can put Michael Novak and the LBMA together up until yesterday is quite incriminating in my opinion. Very difficult, of course, to prove all this, but it just goes to show that Bank of England is a big part of this manipulation of the gold market. Bank of England holds, I think, about 5,000 tons of gold. And that's not the UK, UK's gold. UK only has 300 tons. So I would say that any country that has gold with the Bank of England, people in those countries need to contact their officials and say, what's going on here? What are they doing with our gold? The other thing I like to point out, I saw an article on Tuesday as well by someone called Jay Kim. He's the founder and chief education officer of Squelch Academy, right? And Zero Hedge posted it. And he's got a YouTube channel called Mala Malama. Put the link to his article in the description. But he talks about what's going on with the DOJ. And I'll read from his first paragraph. And it's really interesting what he's talking about. So I quote, "Today, I want to explore the real impetus behind the U.S. Department of Justice investigation into JP Morgan's nefarious gold price rigging schemes, because I suspect there is much more to the story than what meets the eye. Why has the U.S. DOJ suddenly embraced the fight for justice against bankers and charged them with charges normally reserved for criminal racketeering organizations under RICO, or Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, as revealed in unsealed indictments earlier this week? I have in particular been closely following the case of John Edmonds for a year now, as he was a 13-year JP Morgan banker indicted in August of last year, 2018, for manipulating the prices of gold, silver, platinum, and palladium. During his court hearing, Mr. Edmonds stated that he learned his trade craft of illegal commodity futures price manipulation from his seniors at JP Morgan, and that his actions were well known and encouraged by his superiors. I have been following his case for more than a year because it was initially reported that he could face 30 years in jail for his crimes, and I wondered, since he had already started to sing during his hearing before his sentencing, how JP Morgan executives were going to position Mr. Edmonds' crimes, as normally bankers caught committing systemic bank-wide crimes are usually shipped down the river by their superiors without a paddle and accused of being a rogue banker and acted on his or her own. In this case, Mr. Edmonds had apparently started naming names, and the rogue banker lie would have been a particularly hard sell to make by his superiors. I started tracking his case even more closely after December 2018 came and went, and Mr. Edmonds received no sentencing for his crimes as had been scheduled. I could uncover no reason for his delay in sentencing at first, but it was later revealed that his sentencing would be delayed until early 2019 because he was cooperating with prosecutors, which in layman's terms meant he had turned snitch to save his own skin. Since then, Mr. Edmonds' sentencing has been postponed a second time, and as of September 2019, he still has yet to receive his sentence, which I interpret to be a sign that he must really be singing quite loudly. So I'll stop here. So there you go. This is coming out. It's no coincidence now that the DOJ has gone after, his bosses. Could Edmonds have also, talked about other institutions being implicated, like central banks? We'll have to see. It's very interesting. I think we need to keep a close eye on this. This could really be developing into a huge story. Am I saying that the move in the price of gold late yesterday is related to this? No, I'm not. Am I saying that the manipulation is going to stop? No, I'm not. But it's starting to see the light of day. The fact that JP Morgan, LBMA, Bank of England, these people are all involved in rigging the gold market. And it's, and it goes to the Federal Reserve as well. I mean, the Federal Reserve oversees JP Morgan, right? And they know that they're doing this. So I have argued in the past that, Bill Murphy has argued, that the bullion banks work on behalf of the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England, right? Manipulating the gold market. And it looks like it's starting to come out. So it's great news. But of course, these people are very powerful, and we're going to have to wait and see what happens. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on Twitter, Steemit, and on DTube. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.